Hey everybody, I'm Amber, a disabled gal, here to reveal or remind you that you're complete in Jesus Christ alone. So, person first versus identity first language. In case you're not familiar, I will explain it. Some examples of person first language would be person with a disability, or person with autism, or person with a visual impairment, things of that nature. Whereas identity first language would be like disabled person, autistic person, blind person, deaf person, things like that. Some people have more of a preference towards identity first language, and some people have more of a preference towards person first language. And some people don't really have a preference at all. The people who have more of a preference towards person first language, usually it's because they want to be seen as more than just their disability. They want to be seen as a person first, hence the name. The people who prefer identity first language usually prefer that because they don't want to see their disability as something negative, or they don't think their disability is something negative. Identity first language can give a sense of dignity. We may have limitations, but that does not make us say inferior or subhuman. Ugh. It doesn't make us say lesser than human being. Whether we have a disability or not, we are human beings. And from a Christian perspective, we are all made in the image of God, no matter if we have a disability or not. For me personally, I don't really have a preference for identity first or person first language. It's just kind of whatever comes out of my mouth at the moment. One thing that most of the disability community does agree on is that the important thing is actually using the word disability in some way. Most of the disability community wants to avoid euphemisms such as like differently abled or even special needs. That one is a little tricky because it's used in a lot of like educational contexts and things like that. But in general, most of us prefer to avoid euphemisms. Some things do deserve stigma, but disability is not one of those things. From a Christian perspective, while I recognize that disability is a result of the fall, it still isn't something to be ashamed of or something that makes you less of an image bearer of God. So for that reason, I don't feel the need to be ashamed of my disability or see it as this gross, icky, thing that I need to like either try to hide as if that's possible or whatever. I have heard some Christians with disabilities say they're not disabled. I think I get the sentiment, like they're saying in eternity, their soul ultimately doesn't have a disability. But here on earth, I don't think there's anything sinful or wrong by acknowledging we have this characteristic of currently being disabled. Like in eternity, I might not have brunette hair, but I'm still going to call myself a brunette right now. But that's not a hill I'm going to die on. If someone with a obvious disability doesn't want to call themselves disabled or, even say that they have a disability, like, you know what? That it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. My only concern would be if they're trying to get some sort of accommodation, obviously you need to disclose your disability so that you can get that accommodation that's needed. That brings me to another point. Disabled and persons with disability is a protected legal term. Euphemisms such as differently abled or special abilities or, cringy things like that, those are not protected terms. So that is another reason why it's best to stick with some variation of the form disabled or disability. Now, one thing that's important to note with identity first language, in most cases, I don't think the intention behind it has any idolatrous issues. However, I do know there are some people who cling to this as an actual identity, like this is who I actually am, and things like that. So essentially, their whole identity is wrapped up into this disability. A foundational aspect of this channel actually is that we find our identity in Christ. So if we're finding our core identity in our disability, that's a problem. Now, of course, our disability does inform a huge part of our lives. In many cases, basically every aspect of our life is somehow impacted by our disability. So I do understand and acknowledge that, but that can be true at the same time while not having your core identity be the disability. Just like anything else in life, we can make things an idol. Some people make marriage their identity or their job their identity. And while those things are fine, it's not fine to make them your identity. Hopefully you could keep on track with me jumping around a little bit in this video. I hope it was edifying to you. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to my supporters. You guys really help this channel out tremendously.
The video you just saw was made by Fallible Christians.
Although we diligently seek to represent the God of the Bible accurately, please understand that we are still being sanctified.
For absolute truth, please refer to the Bible.